Hey there, my name's Alex and today is the first day of beekeeping of 2025. As you can see behind me, I've got quite a few bees now. I've got 9 beehives, and with the weather being so good, they're flying so much. They're all buzzing around the front of the hives, and I haven't actually gone inside the hives this year yet. We're gonna get to it. We're gonna open up the boxes and see what work we have to do. So beekeeping is the practice of looking after bee colonies with the primary goal of harvesting honey. My aim has always been to harvest maximum honey to share with my friends and family, and if I have any excess, I try to sell it in hope to earn back some of the money that I've spent on beekeeping. Back in 2022, I had my first honey harvest of 12 kilograms. 1 year later, my second harvest came in and I had a total of 68 kilograms. And due to some big mistakes on my behalf, my last year's honey harvest that should have been around 60 to 70 kilograms ended up being 25 after most of it was robbed by other bees just before I harvested it. I've learned lots over the past 4 years by making a whole load of mistakes, but this year I'm aiming for a much larger honey crop. So the first thing we need to do before we start looking through the beehives is put on a bee suit. Now, a bee suit is basically just a protective suit that covers all your skin and means that you don't get stung by the bees. The bees might still try to sting you, but they won't get through this thick material. It actually doesn't stop you from getting stung completely, because sometimes the bees manage to push their stinger through the material, and other times they find a way in, like through where the armholes connect, or sometimes up through the ankle area. But whenever I do beekeeping, I like to wear my suit because it prevents you getting stung most of the time. And lots of people have asked me what bee suit I have, because you can buy a variety of types of bee suit. You can get some very cheap ones online and others which are more expensive. This one is, I think it's Swainty Breeze. Swainty is the brand, and then Breeze is the type of, the exact model. But this one is particularly special because it has a certain material which allows airflow. Now when you're wearing a bee suit, especially in the summer, it can get so hot inside and you sweat loads and it's not too comfortable. So this particular one has really nice nice air circulation. But to be honest, any bee suit will do. But I've just found over the years that this particular one is really good. If I expected my bees to be really angry today, which sometimes they are, I would definitely recommend putting boots on rather than shoes. Most of the bee action is around the head area, so this is the most important area to be protected. But today I'm gonna roll with my trainers. It should be okay. So glove choice is a subject of much discussion because there's pros and cons to different types of gloves. If you wear a thick leather glove, you're probably never going to be stung on your hands, which is really good, you would think. But there are disadvantages to that. When you wear a really thick glove, you can't feel through the glove. You don't know when you might be accidentally squishing a bee, or you basically just don't have as much sense in your fingers. So I like to use these. These are nitrile kitchen gloves, I guess. Obviously the downside is they're quite thin. The bees can sometimes poke their stinger through. It does happen from time to time, but not as much as you might think. I think the feel of the glove, if it doesn't feel like a animal's skin, so the bee doesn't want to really bother stinging it. With these nitrile gloves, I do get stung, but only every now and then. It doesn't happen often. But having some kind of glove is really important. If you don't want to be stung so much. I would really like to beekeep without any gloves because it's so nice being able to really feel through your fingers the frames as you're picking them up. And also when the bees are crawling on your hand, it's a crazy cool feeling. And with gloves you don't really get that. But from a sort of a safety point of view, it's probably good to wear some gloves. So is getting stung by a honeybee dangerous? For most people, no. Of course, in pretty much all cases, the sting will hurt. At first, a sharp needle-like pain, and then itchiness and swelling can occur over the following day or two. The severeness of a sting depends on where on the body you get stung, and also how deep the bee gets the stinger into your skin. That being said, a very small percentage of the population suffer from more serious reactions to bee stings, which can lead to anaphylaxis, which can be deadly. When I first started beekeeping, I'd never been stung by a honeybee before, and I had no idea what my reaction would be like. So I'd always make sure I was nearby help if things did go badly. I think most people who suffer from allergic reactions to bee stings carry an adrenaline injection, like an EpiPen, just in case they do have a bad reaction. But I don't mean to scare you, it's just good to understand the risks. So inside this bucket is a useful tool for beekeepers, and it's called a hive tool. Basically just a piece of metal with a sharp edge here, like a sharp right angle, and this hook on the other side. The hook is used for like putting under the frames and lifting the frames out. And this sharp edge here is used to scrape off bits of wax and clean surfaces. You'll learn a little more about why this is useful as we go through and look through the hives. You'll see it in action. Anyway, inside this bucket isn't just water. It's a mix of soda crystals and water. Soda crystals is one of the only things that allows you to clean equipment. There's not many other things that you can clean off the wax and clean off the propolis, which the bees use to like glue stuff together. So this hive tool here is perfectly clean, and every time I finish my beekeeping day, I put this back in the bucket and it cleans, so that next time I can take it out and it's fresh and ready to use. You'll probably recognize what this is. This is a bee smoker. It basically is a way that you can make smoke and blow it on the bees. And you might be wondering, why do you want to blow smoke on your bees? Surely that really annoys them. I don't personally know if it makes them angry or not, but what I do know is it really helps with the actual beekeeping and picking up the frames. When you blow smoke onto the bees, it sort of moves them out the way. I mean, if someone was blowing smoke at me, I would definitely get out the way of it. And it does the same to the bees. You blow the smoke on them and it moves them to a different part of the hive and allows you to get your fingers in and pick up the frames without squishing bees. Sometimes the hives can get so congested with bees, there's no place that you can actually put your fingers on to pick up the frames, so you need a bit of smoke to move them out of the way. Smoke is also apparently good for calming the bees down. However, I find this is very temporary. Like, you can blow a couple of puffs of smoke, they calm down, but then they very quickly can get angry again. And what I use to light the smoker is firstly birch bark. This is a great like fire lighting material. I pull that off a birch tree in my dad's garden, and it's great for fire starting. And then I've also just got this packaging material which keeps the smoker going. So kind of the way I do it is I get the lighter, I light up the birch bark. When it's too windy, you've got to use a different tool, also known as a blowtorch. That's more like it. And then you can just stuff in some more material. Now you can use pretty much anything, any natural flammable material for your smoker. You can use pine cones, you can use dry grass, you can use straw or hay. I just found this packaging material is free and it works really well. And then we can close it up and we've got nice puffs of smoke. So let's have a look in the beehives. This is the first time I've looked in these hives in the last 4 months, I think. Wow. So I really don't know exactly what we're going to find. We've got to check that there is a queen in there and that the queen is healthy and laying eggs. We will check if the bees have enough space, and it's just sort of a general inspection to check if everything's going as it should be. There are plenty of bees in there. Now I remember this time last year, the size of my colonies were much smaller. So that's already a good sight. So before we go any further, it's probably a good idea to understand how a beehive works. So to put it simply, a beehive is a house for a single colony of bees. The amount of bees in a hive varies throughout the year. In the summer, a single colony can have upwards of 50,000 bees, but in the winter, this drops massively to around 5,000. These are very rough figures, by the way. I've never actually counted the bees myself. The beehives that you see, the wooden boxes that beekeepers have, they're only a very recent invention in the grand scheme of things. People have been keeping bees for about 10,000 years. like actually looking after them for honey production. But bees have been around for a lot longer than that. I think bees have been knocking around for about 100 million years. You can see that humans haven't been keeping bees that long. But I guess that before humans were keeping bees in boxes, we were still harvesting honey, most likely by going into a wild nest and sticking our hands in and grabbing out some of the honeycomb. I imagine getting stung quite a lot in the process, but humans would have done it like bears do it now. But in a similar way that humans decided to start cultivating plants and do farming, they also realized that they could probably get their hands on honey easier if they kept bees in a more like farm animal way. Bee farming practices have come a long way in recent times. People have designed and created many different types of beehives, and they've actually cultivated different strains of bees so that they have desirable traits, like that they don't sting you as much, and they produce more honey, and they're resilient to diseases. And I guess a big leap forward was made in around the 1800s when a guy called Mr. Langstroth, he invented a type of beehive which included movable frames. So you could actually take the frames out and move them. Now this is the type of beehive that I have been using for the past 3 years, and what pretty much every beekeeper uses in the world these days, because it's so practical. It's made up of a box with 10 or so wooden frames in, and the comb is kept within the parameters of the wooden frame, meaning that you can pull out the whole comb. This opens up many possibilities for the beekeeper. It's easier to inspect the bees during swarm season and check for queen cells being built. It allows the beekeeper to take out and move the frames around, combine with other hives, and make swarm control manipulations. And when it comes to honey harvesting, the honey frames can simply be removed and placed into a spinning extractor. The movable frame hive has also allowed beekeepers to harvest crazy amounts of honey. I read a book by a guy called Ormond. In 1974, Ormond managed to harvest 404 pounds of honey. That's 183 kilograms of honey from one beehive. Look, there's a picture on the back of one of his beehives. Those are all honey boxes on top. It must have been so unstable. Now there's a few different varieties of hive, all based on the Langstroth movable hive design. There's hives with different dimensions, some which are slightly bigger than others, some which are slightly wider than others. But the type of beehive that I use, and what I think most people in the UK use, is called a national hive. Now the national size is I think 460mm by 460mm. That's like the dimensions of the boxes that you use. So when I go and buy new equipment, I always get national size stuff. Does that make sense? So on the edge of the hive, there's not much happening. This is just a frame with nothing on it. There's just some foundation. Basically it's just some beeswax that I put in there. So you can sort of see, it's like a ball. In the middle is where the queen lays all the eggs, and towards the outside the bees store honey and pollen. And right on the edge, sometimes, as we saw with this frame, there's not much going on at all. But we're gonna open up and have a look at the whole hive. So on here you can see more stuff happening. That there is honey. Oh, this frame already I can feel has more stuff in there. It's heavier. There's more bees on there. And there's also more honey stored. So that side has honey, and this side has honey and also pollen. It might be quite hard to see, but in there's lots of different colored pieces of pollen. There's green, there's orange, there's red, yellow. So what we've seen in there so far is honey and pollen, both really good things. Oh yes, and another really good sight, and that is brood. Now what exactly is brood? Brood is the baby bees that are being born. And that's really important to see because it means that there is a queen in here laying eggs. And if you look really closely inside the cells, you can see eggs. The eggs are like tiny grains of rice. You can barely see them with your naked eye, but in lots of these cells are eggs, which is fantastic to see. It means that there is a queen in this hive and it's laying eggs. If I move these bees out the way, you can see all that brown stuff there. Underneath those brown cappings are baby bees, which will be born within a matter of days. So from what I've seen so far, I already know that this colony is doing well. They have pollen, they have honey stores, they have brood in all stages, which is really important. Brood in all stages means that there's basically brood at the egg stage, there's brood at the larval stage, and there's brood which is about to be hatching out. So there's everything in this hive that we need, which is amazing. It means that this hive is ready to go on throughout this year and expand and hopefully make us a load of honey. There's quite a few bees carrying pollen sacs, which is nice. There we have another whole frame of brood, like capped over brood. And from seeing this, with all that brood capped over, and also the same on that side, I know that in a couple of weeks, there's gonna be so many more bees in this hive. You can almost predict how the hive will look in the future, like in a few weeks ahead, when all those bees hatch. These bees aren't too angry. As you can see, there's not many flying around my face, there's not many getting angry, so you don't really need much smoke. But if I do blow a bit of smoke over them, they make a little bit of a fuss at first, but they sort of disappear down into the frames, and it makes it much easier to go in and manage. So there is the queen, and I know it's the same queen that was in here last year because it's got the green dot on its head. That bee there, that single bee, is responsible for all the other ones. Like that, all these ones are this one's daughters. It's the mama bee. And that bee is slightly bigger than all the others. It has a longer abdomen, and it's the only bee in the hive which is actually fertile. It's the only one that can lay eggs. Everything is good in this hive. Wow, I'm very pleased. Oh, that one's really heavy. I wish I could like hand this to you so you could feel the weight of it, because it's so much heavier than the other ones, and that's because it's stacked full of honey. All of that there is thick with honey. And then there's the other end of the hive, a little bit of honey in there. That hive is set to go for this spring. Now, because everything in this hive is looking good, there's not much I need to do. But the one thing I will do is put on a couple of different bits of equipment onto the hive. First is this. This is basically a piece of plastic with holes in. But the interesting thing about this piece of plastic is the size of the holes. All the worker bees can get through these holes. They can squeeze through these gaps and get through, but the queen can't. So basically what we do is we put this on top, and on top of that, we're gonna put this extra box. This is called a super. Super comes from the word superfluous, which is like extra, on top of. So it's basically an extra box that goes on top of the brood area, and this is where the honey will be stored. So because we've got holes there that the queen can't get through, this can go on top, and the worker bees will go up and make their honey, and the queen won't go up and lay eggs. We know that in here is just going to be honey. I'll pull out a frame. So this is what it looks like currently. It's just the empty comb. And then on top of the honey box goes the lid. On goes the roof. And that's one hive checked and all good. I like to put a couple of bricks on top of the hives. It gives me a little bit of confidence that the wind isn't going to blow it down, and also sometimes you have animals which like to rub themselves against the hives, and that can also knock them over. So the plan now is to go through all the hives, do the same thing, check what's going on, maybe add a honey box if the colony is looking healthy. That's 1 out of 1, all good though. The first time you look through a colony of bees, it can be really overwhelming, so I'll try to explain some of the details to look out for. Firstly, there are 3 different groups of bees in the hive. A colony is made up of mostly female worker bees. As the name suggests, these bees do all the work. They build the fresh wax comb, they forage the nectar and pollen, and they make all the honey. Then you've got the male bees, known as the drones. These are slightly bigger than the worker bees, and their job is to mate with queen bees. And lastly, you've got the queen bee. In almost all cases, there will only be one queen bee in a colony, and her role is to lay eggs. I've heard that a queen can lay up to 2,000 eggs a day, but I should add, the drones in a colony do not mate with the same colony's queen. Otherwise, this would cause inbreeding and possibly lead to genetic disorders and also reduce genetic diversity. On a frame of brood, you can tell what type of bee will be born due to the characteristics of the cells. A worker cell pretty much lays flat against the comb. A drone cell is much more mounded, and a queen cell hangs vertically off the frame and is much larger than the others. Seeing all these things tells us a lot about a colony and its health. The cells are where the bees also store their nectar and pollen. Brood are always in the centre and food stores around the outside. My memory is really bad, so I forget what's going on in all the different hives. So I basically have a little red number tag on each hive, and with that I also have a notebook where I write down like my notes of what I've seen in each hive, and I can write hive number 8 blah 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 blah, and it just helps with sort of managing the hives and keeping an eye on what's going on. You can hear that crack when I opened it up, and that is where the bees have stuck the beehive parts together using propolis. Whoa! There's even more bees in this one. So this one, there's bees covering like almost the whole thing. So there's lots of honey being stored in here, which is good. Often you want to look inside the cells to see what's in there. Like, I'm trying to currently find eggs, and I'm trying to see inside the cells, but the light doesn't always allow to see inside. Oh no, I can see now. Sometimes you catch the light in the right way and you're able to see better. Also, sometimes blowing on the bees makes them move out the way. There's no eggs in there, strangely. So we might have a problem with this hive. We're gonna keep looking through though. You see that smoke there? Moved the bees out of the way, so I can now grab it without squishing any. Oh, they've built a load of comb under there. Yeah, empty cells, no eggs, no brood. Which is very strange because the colony looks really strong otherwise. Like, there's a lot of bees in there, so I don't know where the queen is. Now, if I were to just leave this hive and not do anything, this hive would slowly just die. There's no queen in there. There's no one laying eggs, which means the older bees will slowly die off until there's nothing left. So what can I do to solve this problem? Basically, I need to somehow get them a queen. There's multiple ways to do this. Over the years, I've let my own bees raise their own queens. You basically give them some eggs from another hive and they will make a new queen from them. But that does take some time and patience. I could join this hive with another one. So I could plonk this box on top of, say, this one here, which has a queen. They would, over the course of a few days, combine and make one colony. Like joining 2 colonies and putting them together to create an extra big workforce. But this hive is already so strong and looking so good. I want to keep this as its own colony. So what I'm going to do is contact my bee dealer. There's actually people around the UK and around the world who breed bees. Their job is to raise queens and sell them to beekeepers like me. Like, I've just had this problem. I'm in need of a queen, and yeah, I'm gonna contact Lawrence at Black Mountain Honey. He basically sells queen bees, and they're already mated as well. So I can simply put that queen into this hive, and then this colony will be healthy and happy again. it'll be creating more eggs and it'll be functioning properly. So there's not much more I can do with this hive. I know that it needs a queen, and I will get a new queen ordered for this hive. So with beekeeping, once you know how to manage one hive, it's then not too different if you had, you know, 100 more. You're doing the same things, you're looking for the same things inside the hive, which means it's a very scalable sort of hobby. And it's why I think lots of people turn their hobby of beekeeping into a business. It's because it's a very sort of, yeah, an easy thing to scale up if you have the space and the time. Because when you have more and more hives, obviously it takes a lot more time to manage them. It's taken me the last 4 years to grow my apiary up to 9 hives. I started with just one that I was given by a fellow beekeeper, which I then divided in the first year to create 2. Then during my second year, I once again split the hives up and ended up with 4 hives. That winter, 2 of them died, so I was back to 2 again. But then last year, I made it my main aim to expand my apiary. And as well as splitting the hives, I also bought a few more too. This splitting of the hives massively reduced last year's honey crop, but it meant that I went into last winter with 9 colonies. Each winter it's common to have losses, but from what I can see, all my hives have bees flying out the entrances, which is a really nice surprise, and I wasn't expecting them all to survive. Interesting thing I've just seen, there's a spider inside. Now the spiders, I like to keep them. I don't see them as a problem. If anything, they eat the pests that get into the hive. So I think seeing a few spiders is a good thing. My pet spider. You can see the bees coming out the top. I think there's quite a few bees inside this hive. These ones are a little more active. You can see they're flying around a bit more. But there are a lot of bees inside this hive. Oh, it's heavy. There's oh wow. Look at the color. I don't know whether you can notice, but the color of this frame is amazing. It's like really mustardy yellow. And inside, it's full of nectar. Oh, it makes me hungry just looking at it. I want to get some bread and put it on there. That's a man bee, and all the others are lady bees. Yay, that's a good sign. Fresh brood. All of that is brood, which will hatch out soon. But you can see all of that lovely fresh brood. That looks amazing. There's actually bees here dancing. I don't think they're actually dancing like humans would. They're more communicating with their fellow colleagues about like where the nectar sources are. There's a couple of different dances that bees do, but they call it the waggle dance because they sort of wiggle around on the frame, and the way in which they wiggle tells the other bees like how far away the nectar source is and where they need to go. It's just their sort of language. Like humans talk and bees dance. Oh, there's the queen. This one also has a green dot. Now the colour of the queen tells us like how old the queen is. Green is the colour for last year. So it was born last year, and it allows the beekeeper to sort of keep track of how old their queens are. This one's young and healthy and laying loads of eggs, which is great. The hives are looking so much more healthy than they did at this time last year. Another frame just full of honey. So because this hive is also just looking so healthy, I'm going to put on a honey box. So once again, first goes the queen excluder, and then the box, which will be full of honey. Sometimes people ask me, how much space do I need if I want to do beekeeping? The answer to that question varies depending on what scale your beekeeping project is at. If you just have 1 or 2 hives, then you could probably store all your beekeeping equipment in your bedroom, like I did for my first couple of years. However, when things start to scale up and where I am right now is with 9 beehives. You have to think about where you're going to actually keep all your equipment, because on each beehive you might have 3 supers, which are the honey boxes, and you need somewhere to store them. So if you have 3 supers on each of your 9 hives, that's 27 boxes. So that is a honey super, and you might be wondering, why is it wrapped up in plastic wrap? Well, there's a very good reason for that, and it's because there are a number of things that like eating the sticky sweet combs that we have in here. If I didn't wrap this up, they would almost certainly have been eaten by mice. When I came in here after the winter, there were mouse droppings everywhere. The mice had also eaten all of my malt that I wanted to use for making beer. Now, the other thing that will eat the wax is something called a wax moth, which, when it's in its larval stage, will eat through the comb. Now, when I first started beekeeping, I didn't think it would be a problem. As often happens, I don't really think about something until it becomes a problem. And the first winter of storing my equipment uncovered, yeah, my comb had been destroyed by this wax moth larvae. So they go around the comb, eating it all, and then they go into these cocoons. Maybe there's one inside here, we might be able to see one. You can see that they've tunneled through this area here, but they haven't actually eaten too much. There it is. That's one ugly looking insect. And that little insect there can absolutely destroy your beekeeping equipment in the winter. Their diet is beeswax. If you look at the ecosystem as a whole, they're good animals to have. They are like the cleaners of the wax. So in natural beehives out in the wild, they would come along, and if a beehive had died, these animals would clean it up and recycle all the materials. But as a beekeeper, these things are not good. Luckily, my lockup is only 15 to 20 minutes drive away from my bees, and I actually really like the drive over there, through Bristol, over the suspension bridge and into the countryside. It also really helps being able to drive right up to the beehives, meaning I never have to carry any equipment that far. Anyway, back to checking through the hives. Whoa! I think they're getting a bit congested in there. The bees are overflowing. What? So this queen has got a pink dot, which means it was born 2023. And she's doing really well. She's laying so many eggs. Very healthy hive, it seems. So interestingly, not all bees have the same temperament. Some bees get angrier than others. And this colony here is the calmest colony of bees I have ever owned. I actually got this one from Black Mountain Honey, and the guy who breeds the bees there, he puts a lot of effort and time into selecting really good genetics, calm genetics. So the bees that I got from him are super calm. Like, I can wave my hand over the top. None of them are getting angry. Whereas if I did that with one of my other colonies, they would be jumping up at me, and it wouldn't be so relaxed and calm. I would probably say, if you're getting into beekeeping, reach out to a local bee farmer who breeds bees for their calmness, because keeping bees is much more enjoyable and relaxing if your bees are calm, compared to keeping bees that are constantly trying to sting you. They walk around slower and they make less noise. It's quite amazing. We're moving on to the last 2 hives. Now, the last one we looked at was so calm. Now, they're my calmest bees, and these 2 here are my least calm bees. So I'm hoping they're not going to be in too bad of a mood today. Let's have a quick run through and just double check that the queen is laying eggs, which she is. Yeah, that's what you want to see. If I shake these bees off, you can see that whole thing, all of that is capped over brood. And the same with the other side. The bees are going a little bit crazy now. I'll be honest, it gets quite tiring when you've been looking through beehives for quite a few hours. I find it's my back which hurts the most, constantly bending over. But I'm really happy with what I've seen today. Pretty much all my hives are looking really healthy. It was only a couple which were strangely missing queens. If I'm gonna be stung today, it's gonna be with these ones. They are way more aggressive. But aggressive bees doesn't mean unhealthy. It just means that they're kind of a little bit harder to look through. It's less peaceful. There's eggs in there though, which is good to see. I don't have enough frames for this box. They're meant to have 9 frames in, but I don't have enough, I guess. So I need to go to my lockup tomorrow and make up some more. But for now, I'm gonna put this on top just to give them some more space. And there we go. That is the first inspection on the bees of the year. I'm very, very happy with what I've seen. All the colonies have survived through the winter, which is amazing. Every single hive has now got a honey box on top, which has done a couple of things. It gives the bees a bit more space, and it also gives the bees somewhere to store the honey. If we get a nectar flow at some point soon, the bees need somewhere to store all that nectar, and they can now store it in these top boxes. Now, the next few months are the busiest for a beekeeper because there's quite a few things you have to do. Now, firstly, we need to keep an eye on the amount of honey that the bees are bringing in and add more of these honey boxes throughout the season. And also, probably the biggest thing a beekeeper has to manage is swarming. Swarming is the reproduction of honeybee colonies. In the spring and summer months, a colony of honeybees will start making swarm preparations. Inside the hive, it involves the bees making queen cells. Once these queen cells reach a certain age, this is normally around 8 days from the moment the egg is laid in the cell, many of the bees, as well as the original queen bee, will fly away and start a new life in a new home. In the original box, a new queen will be born and take the place of the old queen. This sounds good because it results in more bee colonies. However, for beekeepers, when half the colony flies away, they lose half their workforce, and so this reduces the honey crop massively. But beekeepers have found many creative ways to reduce the chance of losing bees, and I'll be doing some manipulations within the hives over the next month in hope to keep all my bees where they are and hopefully not lose any of them, which will increase this year's honey crop. Anyway, I'm super happy and pleased that my bees are looking healthy. I've got high hopes for getting a record honey crop this year. I will keep you updated with how the season progresses, and I will see you soon. It seems that we had some storms over the winter, and I only just realized that there's this massive, great big branch just above my head whilst I was doing all the beekeeping. So I'm gonna try and get it down. Wow, imagine if that had fallen on my head. Cool, all done.